I've been married to my husband for 8 years, and for most of that time, I thought we had a stable and happy life. We have a 6-year-old son who means the world to me. I work as a pediatric nurse at a major hospital in our city, which means I have long hours, especially on weekends. My husband is a corporate lawyer at a prestigious firm, and his job also keeps him busy. I figured we were just like any other couple, juggling the responsibilities of work, parenting, and marriage. I was wrong. 3 weeks ago, my entire life was turned upside down. It started on a Saturday when I was scheduled to work a 12-hour shift. Due to some staffing changes, I was released early, which was a rare treat. I didn't tell my husband I'd be home early, thinking I'd surprise him and our son. Lately, my little boy had been asking for more mommy time, and I was excited to spend the extra hours with him. When I pulled into the driveway around 2 p.m., I noticed an unfamiliar car parked in front of our house. I didn't think much of it at first. My husband sometimes had colleagues over for work, even on weekends. But as I walked up to the door, I heard laughter. A woman's laughter, mixed with my son's giggles. My heart sank, but I tried to push the feeling away, telling myself it was probably nothing. I opened the door, and what I saw made my stomach drop. There was a woman, probably in her early 30s, sitting on the floor with my son. They were surrounded by his toys, and she was wearing my apron, like she had been cooking. My husband was sitting on the couch, looking relaxed, as if this was a normal Saturday afternoon for them. But it wasn't normal, not for me. My son ran over to me, but instead of his usual mommy, he said something that hit me like a punch to the gut. "Look, real mommy is teaching me how to build a robot." He was talking about this woman, this stranger, as if she was his mother. I stood there in shock, my mind racing to catch up with what was happening. My husband jumped up, clearly caught off guard by my arrival. He stammered something about how Sarah, his so-called work wife, was staying with us temporarily because of issues with her apartment. He mentioned water damage and insurance problems, but I wasn't really listening. All I could focus on was the scene in front of me. My son, who I loved more than anything, was acting like this woman was part of our family. Then, I saw the suitcases. They were half hidden behind the couch, but I could see enough to know what was going on. These weren't suitcases packed for a short stay, they were unpacked, with clothes spilling out. Women's clothes. Sarah's clothes. She wasn't just visiting, she was living in my home. I felt like I was in a fog. I don't even remember what I said next, but I know I walked upstairs to our bedroom, grabbed a suitcase, and started packing my things. My husband followed me, trying to explain, but his words barely registered. He kept saying I was overreacting, that Sarah's situation was temporary, but nothing made sense to me anymore. How long had this been going on? How long had this woman been in my house, pretending to be my son's mother? What my husband didn't know was that 2 weeks earlier, I had already found something suspicious. I was looking for some tax documents in his office when I stumbled upon a folder filled with papers he had clearly been hiding. There were bank statements showing regular transfers to an unknown account, dating back almost a year. There were also documents about a property purchase I knew nothing about. But the worst part was the emails between him and Sarah, discussing their future plans. I had taken pictures of everything, planning to confront him after my shift that weekend. I never expected to find her in my house when I came home early. I packed my son's things while my husband stood there, trying to convince me I was being irrational. But I had already made up my mind. I was done. I couldn't stay in a home where my husband had been living a double life, and I certainly wasn't going to let my son be a part of it either. My son was confused, crying as I got him into the car. He kept asking why we couldn't stay with real mommy longer, and each word felt like a knife in my heart. How had this happened? How had my husband allowed this woman to become so close to our son that he didn't even know who his real mother was anymore? I didn't go far at first. Instead of heading to the hotel like I had planned, I drove to my mother-in-law's house. She and I had always had a good relationship, and I needed someone to talk to. I also knew that she had gone through something similar with my husband's father years ago. When I arrived at her house, I broke down and showed her the documents I had found. I showed her the bank statements, the property purchase agreement, and the emails between my husband and Sarah. Her face went from shock to anger as she looked through the papers. Then, she told me something that made everything worse. The property my husband had bought with Sarah wasn't just any property, it had been purchased using money from his trust fund. A trust fund that had been set up for our family, with strict conditions about how the money could be used. The betrayal hit me like a ton of bricks. Not only had my husband been cheating on me with his work wife, but he had used money meant for our family to build a life with her. My mother-in-law was furious, and I could see the pain in her eyes as she realized what her son had done. The next few days were a blur. I checked into a hotel with my son, paying in cash so my husband couldn't track us. I contacted a divorce attorney recommended by a colleague, someone who was known for handling high-profile cases discreetly. I also filed for emergency custody of my son, documenting everything I had discovered: how my husband and Sarah had encouraged my son to call her real mommy, the financial deception, and the emotional manipulation that had been going on behind my back. As the days passed, the messages from my husband and his friends started flooding in. They were all saying the same thing: that I was being unfair. That I was overreacting. That I shouldn't take our son away from his father just because of a mistake. Some of them even accused me of trying to turn my mother-in-law against him, using her to get what I wanted. But none of them understood what I had been through. None of them knew what it felt like to come home and find another woman living in your house, playing mother to your child and most probably, a wife to your own husband. I know I'm not wrong. I know that as a mother, I have to protect my son from people who would manipulate him, from a father who has shown he cares more about his affair than his family. But sometimes, because of all the pressure, I question myself. Am I being too harsh? Am I really doing the right thing by keeping my son away from his father? I don't know the answer, and maybe I never will. All I know is that I have to fight for my son, for his future, and for my own sanity. But I can't help but wonder, am I wrong for taking this stand? Should I have given my husband another chance? Should I have let him explain? But how can I forgive someone who has shattered the trust we built over 8 years? How can I stay in a marriage where I'm not even sure who my husband is anymore? Update 1. The fallout from my visit to my mother-in-law happened faster than I ever imagined. I thought it would take some time, but she didn't waste a single minute after I handed her those documents. She went straight to the trust fund administrators, showing them the proof of what my husband had done. For some of you asking about this, basically, as much as I know, the trust fund wasn't something he could spend however he wanted. It had strict rules about how it could be used. It was supposed to be for family obligations, like making sure our son had everything he needed. But using that money to buy a house with his affair partner? That crossed a major line. As soon as the administrators saw the documents, they froze the entire trust fund. Every penny was locked up until they could investigate further. And because of some legal requirements, my husband's law firm had to be informed too. This opened up a whole new problem. He and Sarah had been working together for a while, but they never told HR about their relationship, which was against company policy since they were having an affair and working in the same office. It raised a lot of questions about conflicts of interest. The firm started its own investigation, and I could tell from the way things were going that my husband's career was now hanging by a thread. On my end, my attorney moved fast. Within days of filing for emergency custody, I was granted a temporary order that gave me primary custody of our son. The judge was very concerned about the situation, especially when I showed them evidence of how Sarah and my husband had encouraged my son to call her real mommy. The judge said that was a clear sign of parental alienation, and given my son's age, it was a huge issue. It was obvious to the court that my son was being manipulated, and that weighed heavily in my favor. Meanwhile, my husband was calling and texting nonstop. He was all over the place. One minute he was furious, accusing me of blowing things out of proportion, and the next, he was begging for me to come home and fix everything. He kept saying Sarah was just a friend helping him out because she had problems with her apartment. He claimed that buying the property together was purely a business deal, nothing more. But I had seen the bank transfers, the documents, and the emails. They weren't just investing in a property. They were planning a future together, one that clearly didn't include me. As if that wasn't enough, friends and family started reaching out to me too. I was flooded with calls and messages from people telling me how upset my husband was about being away from our son. They said he was heartbroken, missing his little boy, and that he was falling into a deep depression because of the separation. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized something strange. He never mentioned our son in any of his calls or messages to me. Not once. All of his texts were focused on himself, on how he felt, on how unfair it was to him. He didn't say anything about missing bedtime stories or playing with our son in the mornings. It was like he was more concerned about how things affected him than what this whole mess was doing to our child. It was painful to come to terms with that. I had spent years trusting him, thinking he was always doing what was best for our family. I had been so busy working long shifts and taking care of everything at home that I didn't see the signs. And now, I couldn't help but feel like he had checked out of our marriage long before I ever realized it. He had been slowly creating a life without me, making plans behind my back, and involving our son in those plans without my knowledge. The investigation into the trust fund kept moving forward, and from what my lawyer told me, it didn't look good for my husband. If it was proven that he had misused the money, he could face serious legal consequences. The trust wasn't just some casual fund he could dip into whenever he wanted. It had very specific rules about how the money could be spent. It was meant to be used for family obligations, and buying a house with his affair partner was definitely not on that list. My mother-in-law was furious when she found out, not just because of the money, but because of how he had lied to all of us. She had been in a similar situation with my husband's father years ago, and I think seeing her son follow in those footsteps hurt her deeply. Things at his law firm weren't going well either. The internal investigation uncovered their relationship, and because they hadn't told HR, it was a big deal. His job was now on the line, and from what I was hearing, he was on indefinite leave while they figured out what to do. His career, which he had worked so hard for, was now in jeopardy because of his own choices. Despite everything, there were moments when I wondered if I was doing the right thing. Was it really fair to keep my son away from his father, even after all that had happened? There were moments when I saw my son's face light up during the supervised visits with his dad, and it tugged at my heart. They still had a bond, and no matter how much I wanted to protect my son from the hurt and confusion of this whole situation, I couldn't deny that my husband was still his father. Watching them together, even in those short, monitored visits, made me question if I was being too harsh. Was I punishing my husband in a way that would also end up hurting my son? But then I would remember everything my husband had done, all the lies, all the deceit, and how he had tried to replace me in our son's life. That's when the doubt would fade away, and I would feel more confident in my decision. As much as my husband and his friends tried to make me feel guilty, I knew deep down that I wasn't wrong for wanting to protect my child. I wasn't the one who had destroyed our family, he was. Still, it was hard not to feel the pressure from everyone around me. My husband started telling people that I was turning his own mother against him, and that I was making it impossible for him to rebuild his relationship with our son. He tried to spin the story, painting himself as the victim, and I could tell some people were starting to buy into it. They thought I was being too cold, too unforgiving, and that maybe I should just let things go for the sake of our child. But every time I started to doubt myself, I would think about my son and what kind of example I wanted to set for him. I wanted him to know that it was okay to stand up for yourself, that it was okay to demand respect, even from the people you love the most. So, while my husband continued to spiral, losing his grip on both his career and his finances, I focused on what mattered: keeping my son safe and giving him the stability he needed during this chaotic time. I wasn't going to let my husband's bad decisions drag us down any further. Update 2. The situation at my husband's firm has gotten much worse. What began as an investigation into his relationship with Sarah has turned into something much bigger. More employees started coming forward with stories about my husband and Sarah acting inappropriately at office events. They were not as careful as they thought. People noticed that they were getting too close at work parties and company retreats, and rumors had been going around for a while. The worst part was the accusations of favoritism. Several employees reported that Sarah was being pushed forward for partnership consideration even though she had much less experience than others. It looked bad, especially since she and my husband never told HR about their relationship, which was against company rules. My husband had a lot of power over case assignments, and it became clear that Sarah was getting the best ones, the kinds that could help her career a lot. Other associates were upset but were quiet about it until the investigation started. Now, both my husband and Sarah have been put on administrative leave while the firm looks into everything. My attorney has been able to get information from HR, which is helping with my case. The firm is worried about legal issues because some client funds were tied to the property my husband and Sarah bought together. The HR department is cooperating fully, providing documents that could be very important for my divorce. They realize that the relationship and the property purchase could get them into serious trouble. On the family front, my mother-in-law has been a surprising source of support. I never thought we would be this close, given the situation, but she's been there for me and my son every step of the way. She is angry with my husband for bringing shame to the family. After everything she went through with his father years ago, she's doing everything she can to support me. She helps with my son, who is confused and sad. He knows something is wrong, but he doesn't understand the full picture. My son has started seeing a child psychologist who knows a lot about parental alienation. This has been very helpful. The therapist noticed troubling patterns in how my husband and Sarah were influencing my son's feelings about me while I was at work. They were subtly making him think I wasn't around for him and that Sarah was more of a mother figure. It's heartbreaking to think they were doing this. The therapist explained that this could affect my son in the long run if we didn't deal with it quickly. I'm grateful we caught it early and can work to fix his perception of me as his mom. Meanwhile, the trust fund investigation uncovered even more problems. It seems that the property purchase with Sarah was just the start. There were multiple financial issues that violated the trust's rules. My husband made some questionable investments and started undisclosed business ventures with Sarah without telling anyone. The more the trustees looked, the worse it got. Now, they are working to take away his access to the trust fund completely, which would have a big impact on his finances. It's hard to understand how much my husband has kept from me. I thought I knew him well, but each new piece of information showed me how little I actually understood. The fact that he risked our family and his career for this affair is shocking. He has been calling me and texting nonstop, trying to downplay everything. He kept saying I was overreacting and that Sarah was only a close friend. But the evidence is clear, and I don't believe him anymore. I have stopped replying to his messages. There's nothing left to say. He tries to blame me, saying I was too focused on my career and not enough on him, but that's just another excuse. I know his choices are his own, and now he has to deal with what he has done. As for Sarah, I have no idea what she's thinking. I've heard she's been keeping a low profile, hoping that this will blow over. But I doubt it will. Her career is also in jeopardy, and with the investigation looking closely at their finances, she is in trouble too. I can't help but wonder if she regrets being involved with my husband, especially with everything happening. But honestly, I don't care. She knew he was married and that he had a child, and she chose to be a part of this anyway. I don't feel sorry for her. Through all of this, I've learned that people can surprise you, both positively and negatively. I never thought my mother-in-law would become such a great support for me, but she has stepped up in ways I didn't expect. Meanwhile, my husband's friends have reached out, trying to defend him. They tell me he's really upset about being away from our son. But they don't understand that he has done this to himself. They don't know how he's been acting or the evidence I have. My focus now is on my son and healing. I want to ensure he knows I'm his mother, no matter what anyone else says. I've been working hard to keep things stable for him, and I hope that, in time, he can see the truth of what's happened. I'm still not sure where all of this will lead us, but I know I need to protect my son and myself from the damage my husband and Sarah have caused. As each day passes, I wonder how this will all play out. I know the road ahead will be tough, but I'm determined to fight for my family and my son's future. At least, I have you guys to guide me through this Smile Update 3. Everything has truly fallen apart for my husband, and the consequences of his actions are much bigger than even I expected. The law firm officially completed their investigation, and both my husband and Sarah have been fired. What they uncovered was far more than just a personal relationship between them. It turns out that they had been using company resources, including confidential client information, to help with their personal business ventures. This is a massive ethical violation, and the firm wasn't going to take it lightly. It was enough to not only cost them their jobs but also alert the State Bar Association. Now, the Bar Association has launched its own investigation into their actions. This could lead to my husband and Sarah losing their law licenses altogether. It's one thing to lose a job, but losing the ability to practice law could ruin their careers for good. Several clients whose confidential information was compromised have already been notified, and 2 of them are considering filing formal complaints. If they go through with it, my husband and Sarah could be facing serious legal consequences on top of everything else. The situation with the trust fund has also been settled. My husband's access to the trust has been permanently revoked. After the trustees reviewed the evidence, it was clear that he had been violating the conditions of the trust for over a year. He'd been secretly diverting funds and trying to cover his tracks with financial tricks. But it wasn't enough to hide what he'd been doing. The remaining money in the trust will now be held for our son's future, but my husband no longer has any control over it. This means he's lost not only his career but also his financial safety net. I can't imagine what he's feeling right now, but again, these are consequences he brought on himself. As for Sarah, I've heard she's moved out of our house. She's apparently gone back to her apartment, the one that she'd claimed had water damage. It turns out that was a lie too. Her apartment was never damaged at all. That was just another cover story she and my husband made up so she could stay with us. It's unbelievable how many layers of deception there were. But Sarah's problems are far from over. The firm's investigation also found that she'd been leaking client information to competitors. She might have been trying to secure a job somewhere else before everything came crashing down. Now, she's facing legal trouble of her own, and I can't say I feel bad for her. My son has been doing better lately. He's still seeing the child psychologist regularly, and the therapy is helping him understand that what happened wasn't his fault. The psychologist has been working with him to reverse the emotional damage caused by my husband and Sarah. They've been trying to make him think of Sarah as his real mommy, but now, he's starting to realize that wasn't right. It's been slow progress, but he's back to calling me mommy again. It broke my heart to hear him struggle with that, but I'm glad he's starting to heal. He still has nightmares sometimes, and he's developed separation anxiety, but I'm hopeful that with time, he'll recover fully. On the legal side, the divorce is moving faster than I expected. My attorney has been amazing. She's confident that I'll get primary custody, especially with all the documentation we have about parental alienation and my husband's lies. The financial part of the divorce will be more complicated, though. With the trust fund situation and the mess at his job, there are a lot of moving parts. But my attorney is making sure that my son's future will be secure, no matter what happens to my husband financially. I want to make sure my son is protected from any fallout from this disaster. My mother-in-law has been a rock through all of this. I never expected us to become so close, especially given how things started between us. But she's been on my side every step of the way. She's even helping me look for a new house in a better school district for my son. She told me that she doesn't want to see history repeat itself, referring to her own experience with infidelity. She's using her own personal funds to help me make a fresh start. I'm so grateful to her. It's been nice to have someone who understands what I'm going through and who wants to help. When I look back, it's hard to believe how much has come from my decision to stop by her house that day. What started as me confronting my husband's betrayal has spiraled into the exposure of years of deceit and professional misconduct. I didn't expect my actions to uncover so many layers of lies, but here we are. It's overwhelming at times, but I'm trying to stay focused on healing and creating a stable life for my son. One of the biggest lessons I've learned from all of this is to trust my instincts. The documents I found were shocking, but in reality, the signs were there long before that. I just didn't want to see them. Now, I know better. I'll never ignore my gut feelings again. Going forward, I'm committed to building a life where my son grows up understanding what a healthy relationship looks like. I want him to know that honesty and respect are the most important things in any relationship, and I'm determined to teach him that by example. My husband's final message to me still rings in my ears: "You've ruined my life." But I don't see it that way. I didn't ruin anything. He made his own choices. He chose to lie, to cheat, to manipulate. He ruined his own life with every bad decision he made. I'm just the one who brought it all to light. He wants to blame me because it's easier than accepting responsibility, but deep down, he knows this is his doing. I still get messages from some of his friends, telling me that I should try to work things out for the sake of our son, or that I've been too harsh. But I don't believe that for a second. What he did was beyond repair. He didn't just betray me, he betrayed our family. He involved our son in his deception, and that's something I'll never forgive. I'm standing firm in my decision to end this marriage, and I won't let anyone make me feel guilty about it. Now, my focus is on the future. I'm ready to leave the past behind and start fresh. I want my son to grow up in a home filled with love, trust, and stability. I can't change what happened, but I can control what happens next. And that's exactly what I plan to do.